Shanu Mispota, Vitzivanu, Lasok Bedivre Torah, Lasok Bedivre Torah, Lasok Bedivre Torah, Lasok Bedivre Torah, Lasok Bedivre Torah. Okay, so you had first of all, before we do anything, we give charity so that the angels of charity bless our learning. You can pass this around. Just pass that around if you would, Ed, please. Okay, you had a question about
this section of which book and chapter and all that says
Parsha Shoftim.
where you should listen to your judges,
right or left, whatever they tell you. It is Parsha Shoftim, which, give me a second, I'll tell you where it is. Just give me a minute and then we'll start class. It is, it's in Parsha Shoftim, the book of Deuteronomy. I'll tell you the exact chapter in a sec. It's chapter 17. It's chapter 17 around verse 8. Okay, so we're starting off the series, and the best place to do is to start at the beginning. So, a few books you should get. One is the Tanakh. This is my favorite. It's by Art Scroll Publishing. You can get a JPS, but what's great about Art Scroll is that it's directly Hebrew to English, and so it's really the best. It's by Masora Publishing, Art Scroll Publishing. A book that's a phenomenal book is a book called The Jewish Way by Rabbi Greenberg. It's a fabulous book called Living the Jewish Way, Living the Holiday. It's a great book about the holidays and how that really is the essence of Judaism. A fabulous book to get in your library is Jewish Meditation by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. Really the best guide to beginning Jewish meditation ever done. There is, and we'll go over other things as well as we go down.
Who's the author of Jewish Way again?
Rabbi Irving Greenberg. It's not a very spiritual book, but it's a fabulous book about what the holidays are. It tells you the history, how it's practiced, how each holiday throughout the calendar. And on a certain level, if you understand the Siddur, the prayer book, and you understand the calendar, you understand Judaism at a much deeper level than someone who's taking just a general theology class. So we spend a lot of time on Torah. We'll spend a lot of time on biblical commentary for the first part of the series. But the reality is that ultimately the Siddur and the calendar are how we live Judaism. Okay, I sent out an email today. It went out earlier, right, on the month of Kislev, because we just started the month of Kislev and how important this month is and what it really means. And I just barely touched on anything, which we need to find out about if we're going to do. And I think we should do it as a full day workshop, Orlando, for people to do their own astrological readings. We can do it online at the same time if we want, but to actually have people here, and we'll probably do it as a 6 or 8 hour and bring in lunch or something like that. Okay? All right, so let's talk about Judaism. Tanakh, first thing you should get. It is an acronym. It is not the Old Testament. The Old Testament implies that there is a New Testament. We don't accept that the Christian scriptures are in the same way holy the way our Christian brothers do and sisters do. So we don't call it the Old Testament. It's called either the Hebrew scriptures or what we call it is Tanakh. Tanakh is an acronym: Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Torah is for the first 5 books. That's what we call the first 5 books. Nevi'im, the prophetic section, and Ketuvim, the writings section. By the way, it is not the same as the Old Testament in a Christian Bible, which places the prophets after the writings. Traditionally, not always, but traditionally. Okay? Let's talk a little bit about Judaism and some of its values and what it is. So, the first thing is this concept of action versus faith. We are very much about action. All traditions want you to believe in God and act righteously. However, if you can only do one, Catholicism will teach, well, you need to believe in God. The priest can forgive you. In our tradition, it's action. Okay? Because the rabbi can't forgive you. That's not our job. So ours is very much action as opposed to faith. Where you see that clearly is in a Jewish wedding. So in a traditional Jewish wedding, there is no, do you take this woman to be your bride, lawfully with a bride, to have and to hold, to share, to love, to whatever? I do. We don't have vows. We actually have the action of the groom takes his wedding ring, or takes her wedding ring, puts it on her index finger, saying, with this ring you are consecrated to me according to the laws of Moses and Israel. And if she accepts it, she has to put it on her own finger. It's an action as opposed to a word of saying I do. So we're very action-based in that way, and our belief is that action leads to faith. Okay, you want to have both, but if you can only have one, act righteously. In fact, it says in the Talmud, in the Yerushalmi Talmud, that God says, better you should not believe in me, but treat each other righteously. Okay, that our action is really what it's about. So let's talk about some of the basic things in Judaism. God's name, you find it in your handout somewhere. There we go. Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. Okay, why don't I have a different handout than you have? That's odd.
You don't.
No, I do. I do. I have other things behind it that you
No,
don't have.
yours is more.
Okay, so I guess I have more than you do.
Yeah.
It's okay. Does he have the back handout? Oh, he
Yeah.
does. He just has a different
Yeah.
order. Okay, whatever it may be. So, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. These letters are soft letters in Hebrew. The Yud, which looks like the little apostrophe, can be pronounced as a Y, a J, or silent. The Hey can be an H or silent. The Vav, this line right here, can be a Va, a Wa, a O, or a U. And this can be an H or silent. So we don't know how to pronounce it because remember in Hebrew, the vowels are underneath the letters. And in the Torah, there are no vowels. In the Hebrew newspaper, there are no vowels. So you need to know what the word is. Well, this is a word that could be pronounced any number of ways. It could be Yuhu-Wuhu. It could be Yahweh. It could be Jehovah or Yahweh. That's where you get these names from. And because we don't know how to pronounce it properly, and we don't want to pronounce it wrong, so your name Ed could be, if we only see the D, your name could be Ed, it could be Adi, or it could be Dewey, right? Because we just don't know. So it's because we don't know how to pronounce it properly. We don't use God's name in vain. We don't use the four-letter name. When you've heard, you shall not take God's name in vain, that doesn't mean you can't say God. It doesn't mean you can't say Lord. It doesn't mean you have to write G-D. It's a fine thing to do, but you don't need to do that. This is the name. And we do, by the way, pronounce it in meditations. But we traditionally, what we do is we call it Hashem. Ha meaning the, Shem meaning name. So we say Hashem, the name. Or we say Adonai, which means my master. Okay. Academics call it the Tetragrammaton, the four-letter name. Okay. It is, we don't know how to pronounce it, so that's what we do with this name. Now, this is the key that unlocks all of Judaism. Everything Jewish can be understood through this filter and through this skeleton key. This is literally the skeleton key that opens up all of Judaism in every level. How we have to structure our service, what the mysticism is, everything is through this name. We are not a people of the book, we are people of the name. Okay? Well, I'll come back to that. Okay, I'm going to come back to this name in a moment. Throughout our Torah, throughout our Bible, throughout our Hebrew scriptures, our Tanakh, you hear a question being asked. And the question is asked by God, typically, to Adam and to Noah and to Abraham and to Jacob and to Hezekiah. And the question is Ayecha, which literally means, where are you? Where do you stand? And the answer that is given by all these people is Hineni, which means I am present, I am here. Realizing that everything's always shifting, but we're present in the shifting. I would contend and do contend that every one of us is being asked by God every moment, where do you stand? And the people we remember as having made a difference were the people who had the courage, willingness, and ability to say, I'm here, I'm present. And Judaism, in all of its rituals, all of its ceremonies, all of its liturgy, what it's all designed to do is to get us to a place of being present, fully present. Most people aren't fully present most of the time. They wander through life without really being present, and as a result, appreciating all of life in their presence and being in the moment. So in Buddhism, they call it mindfulness. It's what we achieve through our rituals and our teachings of being present intellectually, physically, spiritually, emotionally. We're totally present in the moment. Now, we can talk about that from a neurophysiological place, from a neurochemical place in our brain. When we are present, our neurochemistry shifts. So typically, you may remember from your junior high or high school biology class or anatomy class, right? Our systems vacillate between the sympathetic system and the parasympathetic system, fight and flight or relaxation. What happens when someone gets in the zone, which is when through meditation, through prayer, an orgasm, psychotropics, all sorts of different techniques that we naturally fall into the zone. What happens is our sympathetic and parasympathetic systems overflow. And the hippocampus, which is about right back here, becomes 400% more active. There's been a lot of work done on this in the neurophysiological level of prayer and meditation by, I think the seminal work was done in the 80s by some guys named Keeley and Newberg from the University of Pennsylvania. I think the first book was called The Mystical Mind, but they did a lot of research on this. We can track the brain chemistry of when you're present. So Judaism is to get us to that place. Jewish ritual, Jewish teachings are to get us to that place of being aware, of being present, which we're not most of the time. To put it in a different language, of being in the zone. So that every moment is a moment of being in the zone. Great book, I and Thou, discusses this. We'll talk about it in a number of weeks. But so the idea is to be able to say, I am present, I am here. And most of us aren't most of the time. Okay? Let's talk a little bit about how Judaism is a constant overlaying of wheels that go deeper and deeper. So remember I said this is God's name, Yud, He, Vav, and He. If you look at this page, you see that every letter in Judaism has a numerical value. Okay? Just like A would be 1, B would be 2, C would be 3, etc. Right? It's Roman numerals, right? A V is 5, an X is 10, etc. Every Hebrew letter has a numerical value. And if the values are, if you go through the alphabet, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud. Yud is 10. He is 5, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He. Vav is 6, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, He, Vav. And He is 5. So the numerical value of the word of God's name is 26. Remember that. We're going to come back to it.
Yud is 1.
Yud is 10. Yud is the 10th letter of the alphabet.
Okay.
It's a typo.
It's a typo. Okay.
Typos happen. Okay.
Well,
So
you got to be present.
you got to be present. Now, if we go back to our Hebrew alphabet, not alphabet, but our Hebrew alphabet, the first letter is the letter Aleph, and we see it here. This is the letter Aleph. Okay. It is the only silent letter in Hebrew. Today, in modern Hebrew, the Hebrew letter Ayin is silent. We pronounce it silently. So Shema is pronounced Shema because there's an Ayin at the end. In ancient Hebrew, Ayin was actually pronounced. It was pronounced Ayin. So Shema would not be Shema, it would be Shema. Now you know why we pronounce it silently. But the only truly silent letter in Hebrew is Aleph, which has a numerical value of 1. All right, it's the first letter. Everyone with me?
Mhm.
Okay. But that Aleph can be broken apart as well.
In that it's silent. It means only the vowel associated
Exactly.
with the letter is spoken.
Right. So in Hebrew, if I have here, ooh, are these new pens, Orlando? Ooh. So if I have here Hebrew letters, right? And underneath the Hebrew letters, I have vowels that may make an A sound, they may make an Ah sound or an Aw sound, and they take on the letter. So if this is a letter that has a G sound, then it would be Gay or Ga or Gaw. Okay? But Aleph would just be E or Ah or Aw. With me? Okay. Can I use this? May I use this, Orlando? Is that okay? I have to ask him for everything. Because he knows what he's doing, I think. Okay, so Aleph is the only silent letter in Hebrew. Its numerical value is 1. But we have some amazing books that are at least a couple of thousand years old that are some of the roots of Jewish mysticism, which is embedded throughout Judaism. And one called Sefer HaBahir and one called Sefer Yetzirah. And these books also talk about the letters and other things. And now you can look, this is an Aleph, right? So all these colors. I don't know what to do. So this is what an aleph looks like. Right? With me? Well, what we're taught is that has a numerical value of 1, but we can also look at it as an aleph is composed of a vav, right? A vav is just a vertical line, and 2 yuds. There's 1 yud, there's 1 yud. Right? We see it over here. Make sense?
Mhm.
With me? Now, since we can look at it as the number 1, but since a vav is 6 and a yud is 10 and yud is 10, that means aleph also has the numerical value of 26. Tell me if I lose anybody. Okay? This teaches us, and this is again how Judaism intersperses and overlays itself upon itself, so we can go deeper and deeper into understanding. This teaches us that since the numerical value of God's name is 26, and the numerical value of aleph is 26, where do we feel or hear or see God? When we're silent inside. Right? When the chatter has disappeared. It's in the silence that we find God. That doesn't mean it has to be silent around it, but in our silence, in our stillness. Does that make sense when I phrase it that way? Okay. So these are just, I just want to give you an idea of how Judaism, I move very quickly. So if you have a question or if you're online and you want to type in a question, feel free. So these are just, I want you to start getting an idea of how things overlay each other and how they overlap. Another understanding would be, since the word for love is ahava, that's the word for love. Oops, let's do that right. So that's the word for love, ahava. Okay? Aleph has a value of 1, He has a value of 5. That is the second letter, so there's a value of 2. He has a value of 5th letter. So 5 plus 2 plus 5 plus 1 equals 13. Half of God's name. So we say when we can really experience and know God's love for us, and we can know our love for God, then we understand God's name. See how this kind of overlaps? And okay, I'm just going to give a sense of that tonight, because we're going to start creating a real strong foundation through studying of biblical verses and biblical stories. And what we're going to do is, through that strong foundation, then we're going to be able to build on everything to understand how things are connected. So again, when we love God, when we know God's love for us and we know our love for God, we understand God's name. Now, you've heard that we are made in the image of God, right? It says we're made with in the image of God. Does that mean God has gray hair or ponytail or a large nose?
And if that were an explanation, I mean, if that were absolutely so, we wouldn't have the different races and the different appearances and
So what does it mean?
Yeah.
Again, we go back. Remember, I'm saying, and I'm going to keep going back to this, that God's name is the skeleton key. If you take God's name and you make it vertical instead of horizontal, it looks like this. It looks like a human being, doesn't it?
Back page.
I don't know which page is in your hands, but it looks like
Last
it.
page.
Okay. There's the yud, there's the hey, there's the vav is the torso, there's the hey. So on my body, this is my yud, this is my hey, vav, and hey. Now we say throughout our prayer service, Ushmo Echad, and his name is one, his name is unified. So at the end of the Elenu prayer, we have this quote, and it's actually from the book of Zechariah, chapter 9. I believe it's chapter 9. And it says in it, first of all, understand, we're taught that Zechariah is a reincarnation of Moses' soul. So his stuff is pretty, what Zechariah says, is pretty darn important. And it says at the end of the Elenu, Bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Bayom hahu, and on that day, yiyeh Adonai echad, God will be one, u'shemo echad, and his name will be one. Well, what does it mean, his name will be one? Well, when I think in partnership with God, when I give and receive in partnership with God, when I feel in partnership with God, and when I walk through the world in partnership with God, Shmo Echad, his name is one. Okay? So, and that's in our liturgy, we say it multiple times every day. Yet how many people, how many Jews, how many ultra-Orthodox Jews have any idea that's what it means. And if you talk to an Israeli, if you talk to a Chabadnik, if you talk to whatever Orthodox Jew, 99.9% of them do not know this. They've never bothered thinking that this prayer, or that's at the end of the prayer, this quote from Zechariah, they've never thought, what does it mean? And his name will be one. That's what it means. Okay?
You know how many people know that? 4.
Not enough.
4.
No.
There's 4 in this room.
There's been passed around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
It's known, but
Right.
unfortunately, the fact that you can pray very quickly in Hebrew does not make you knowledgeable. Okay? The fact that you have a long beard and payas does not make you knowledgeable, and it does not make you holier than thou because you have whatever look. One of my favorite lines in the Talmud, it says, do not judge by the flask, rather by what it contains. Okay, we all make that mistake too easily. So we find that this name is relating to silence. It's relating to love, right? Because 13 and 13 equals 26. Our love for God, God's love for us. It's relating to what the body is, and it's relating to all the name. Now, when we say that we're made in God's image, this makes a lot more sense than saying ponytail and gray hair, right? Okay. In Judaism, we really did something that was amazing. We created what academics call a portable homeland. Typically, any indigenous people, and we were much more consonant with indigenous tribes than we are with Christianity or other faiths. Typically, if you take people off of their land, they lose their identity, right? This is what the Trail of Tears was all about. This is what the American government did with different native tribes, right? Take them off their indigenous land, put them in a reservation, they'll lose their identity. What do they do in Tibet? Take the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan Buddhists off their land, right? They'll lose their identity. This is why, by the way,
Australia, exactly.
Same thing with the Aboriginals. This is why the Dalai Lama, when he was thrown out of Tibet, the first people he met with was actually a group of rabbis. Because he said, how did you keep your culture alive without your homeland? Because all tribes, all peoples are related to their land. And we are related to Israel. But how do we survive when we're not in Israel? And the answer is something called a portable homeland. We took our teachings, all that's in this Bible, and we placed them into a prayer book, into a siddur, which means an order, into prayers, so that we could have the experience that we had while we were in the temple. We could still have that experience even when there's no longer a temple. It took about 8 centuries to be able to develop that. But so we have a portable homeland, so you can be a Jew anywhere in the world. You can't go to the Kotel anywhere in the world, but that's only in Jerusalem. But you can do that. All right, so how am I doing so far? You guys up to speed on this? Okay. Hopefully everyone there online is up to speed on this as well. So I want to give you an idea of the depth that is hidden within Judaism everywhere. So this is the word Bereshit, this Hebrew word, translated usually as in the beginning. It is the first word of the first line of the book of Genesis. Right? Here's your problem. It's a made-up word. It is not a real word. It doesn't exist anywhere else. It's like saying supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Now we know if we say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, it has something to do with being big, because there's a super part, right? But we really don't know a whole lot about it. This is the first word in the Torah. And there are pages and pages written by our different commentators like Rashi or Rambam. Rashi says that, who's a great commentator, we'll study him later on. Rashi actually says it begs to be interpreted. It begs to be turned inside and out. So let's look at what this word means. Okay? This is the word right there. I'm going to erase everything else. I can erase everything else, right? Is that okay? If it's not, it's too late.
I tend to forget easily, and it's not about what you're saying. If I don't tell you about something now, I'll forget.
Okay.
There is a movie called Pi.
I know the movie well.
Okay. Never mind.
I know the movie well. Let me put that back there because I actually wanted
the section of the Chassid.
Yeah, no, I know that movie well.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the word Bereshit. Okay? Means translated in the beginning, but we don't know what it means because in the beginning is not what it means. It's got the word Rosh in it. That generally means head or start or beginning. Not beginning, but head. But we're going to look at this word a little bit. First of all, I could take this word and play anagrams. I love anagrams. You guys play anagrams at all? Word? Okay. And you can take that word and you can decide to transpose it into this phrase that says Shirat Av, which means the song of the Father. What does this teach us? God creates the universe through music. Okay, music has a whole other level. Again, when we get into Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, we'll talk about the relationship of the 12 notes in a scale to the 12 planets and constellations that are dealt with, to different parts of the body, to everything else. So it can be the song of the Father. But we're going to look at something a little bit different. This word Bereshit, and you might want to take a pen for this on your page that says Bereshit. Okay? So this is Bereshit. Okay? The rabbis ask, why does the first word of creation, and we believe the Torah is the blueprint of the universe, why does it begin with the second letter of the alphabet, Bet? Why doesn't it begin with Aleph, which is the first letter? We're going to answer that. But I want you to imagine that, in fact, there is an Aleph right here, hidden before the Bet. Okay? When we look at Torah, the last word of Torah is Israel. So there was never arose a prophet like Moses. Israel. Okay? And the first word is this word Bereshit. That is both a bet or a vet, depending if you have the dot, which we don't have it. So if you take the last letter of the Torah and you take it to the first letter, you have the word Lev, which means heart. Okay? So we're going to pretend that there's actually a lamed up here because that's the last letter of the Torah. And remember, every Simchas Torah, we read the last paragraph and the first paragraph. It's one long mantra, one long meditation. So remember that word is there, meaning heart. Okay? And in between the heart, in the middle of the heart, is silence. Why am I saying that? Do you see why? Right? The Aleph is between the Lamed and the Bet. With me? That makes sense? Did I lose you? Okay. So silence in the middle of the heart. Okay, now you want to watch something really fun? This is fun. If you take this word Bereshit, which is not a real word, okay, so there must be something in it. Either God doesn't know Hebrew grammar or there's hidden meanings every time there's a mistake in grammar in the Torah. We prefer to believe that there's hidden meanings. If you take the first and the second last and last, it spells the word bait. So I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'll try and make it a little bit easier. So first we have silence in the middle of the heart, right? Okay. If you take the first and the last two, it spells bait or bayit, which means house or container.
First and last letter of Bereshit.
If you take the first, the second, the last, and the last.
Okay.
Okay, so you're going to take those, it spells container. If you take the first, the second, and the third, it spells the word bara, which means create. Okay? If you take the second, third, and fourth, it spells, I'll do this right, it spells the word rosh, which means head or intellect. Right? Also means, literally the head. This is my rosh. Okay? If you take the third and the fourth, it spells the word esh, which means fire or passion. You guys with me? Okay, yes, yes, yes. We're checking whoever's online if they're okay too. If you take the third, the fourth, and the fifth, it spells the word ishi, which means my human being, my man. Okay? If you take the last letter, it's Tov, which is the last letter of the entire alphabet, it spells the word, it stands for Torah. Tov always stands for Torah, which literally means guidelines. So what is this word really giving us? It's telling us how to manifest anything in your life. You want to create something in your life, this is the model, this is the map, this is how you do it. It's all right there in this first word of the Torah. God is giving you a map, each of us a map, how to manifest, how to create anything in our lives. How do we do it? First we go to a silent place in our middle of our hearts. So the silent place in our heart, that's where our desires are. We create a container, and we create with our intellect and our passion that which we want to create, and we give it guidelines to exist. Example, you want to create a piece of music, right? So you said, okay, I want to create music. You create, that's the silence in your heart, this desire that God has placed in the middle of your heart to create music. You create a container. I want it to be a choral ensemble. I want it to be an orchestral piece. I want it to be a jazz band piece. I want it to be a solo guitar piece. You then create what you want to create with both your intellect and your passion. You create what you're creating, and you give it guidelines to exist by. It's going to be in this key. It's going to be in this rhythm. You want to create a piece of art. There's something in your heart that says, I want to express my pain, my joy, my love in art. Okay? That's the silent place in the middle of your heart. What's the container? Well, I want to do it as a sculpture. I want to do it as photographs. I want to do it as painting. I want to do it as charcoal. You create it. But anything that's really beautiful has both intellect and passion, doesn't it? And once it's created, you have guidelines of how it's going to be framed, how it's going to keep existing. It is how to manifest anything in your life. It doesn't matter what. And that includes a relationship. All right? That absolutely includes a relationship. I get calls, I get conversations almost daily. I have conversations with people. Rabbi, I wish I could find my partner. Why am I 28 years old and I can't get in a serious relationship? Why do I keep having bad relationships? Why can't I find what I need? What's going on? Well, the first question I ask those people is, do you believe in God? And if you do you believe God wants you to be happy? If you believe God wants you to be happy, the only reason you're not in a relationship is because you're not clear on what you want. The Baal Shem Tov, a great mystic, taught that God is a bright light. We block him out with one small hand. I would then add and do it, and then we complain that it's dark and our arm is tired. Judaism is a series of techniques, rituals, and teachings to consciously lower our hand and bathe in God's light. Okay? You had a question?
I understand what you're saying, and it sounds wonderful, and it's based on study. These things make a lot of sense. However, one could also consider that the Torah itself is giving you all of these events which help you do what Bereshit is trying to say.
It's going to give you not just the Torah, but everything in Judaism. Again, it goes back to Judaism saying, Hineni, I'm present.
So why can't this also be a table of contents of what's
because it doesn't come. It's not really a table of contents as much as it is a cliff note. How's that? Or Reader's Digest version.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's not a table of contents. It doesn't, in the word Bereshit, it does not teach us all the ways to do different things. It doesn't teach us about dreams or opening your heart or all these different things that we're going to find in Torah. And
it just tells the purpose.
It just says, it's just saying this is a map on how to create.
Yes.
So when someone comes to me and they say, well, I want to be in a relationship, the first thing that I need to do, they've identified in the silence of their heart that they want to be in a relationship, right? Next step is build a container. So I tell them it's an ancient technique, and you would not believe how effective it is. Write down the 9 things you want in a partner. 9, not 10, not 8. Okay? Write down the 9 things you want in a partner. And then when you come up with that list, I'm going to beat you up about it. So when you say, I want my partner to be good looking, what does good looking mean? Good looking to you, good looking in the classic way that we view good looks in today's culture in the West, good looks in Brazil, which is different than America, which is different than in Africa, right? What do you mean by good? Do you mean good looking for other people? Do you mean that they accept that they are beautiful to you and you appreciate the beauty? Do you mean that they turn you on? What does it mean? And if you don't know, I'll help them build a container. They'll come up with 9 qualities and I'll beat them up. What do you mean? Why 9? There are 9 months to the month of pregnancy, number 1. Number 2, 9 creates a net. 8 points make a circle, right? Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Creates a nice circle. That's 2-dimensional. When I put the 9th point, I've now created a net. What's the one thing the universe always hates? I don't care what your belief system is.
Vacuum.
A vacuum. Always will be filled, won't it? So if you create that net, that container, it's going to get filled, isn't it? So I just walk them right through that. Okay? And then they're going to have to create the relationship with both their intellect and their passion. The relationship is what's created, and they're going to have relationship guidelines. We do this together, we don't do this. Or this is allowed, this is not allowed. Okay? We're getting married. That means you stop going out with all those other girls, right? Whatever it may be. So this is a map that teaches us how to create. It's in the very, very first words of the Torah. Okay, the very, very first words that God has written here. Any questions on that? Does that make good sense to everyone?
Well, what follows the word?
We're going to go over that next.
Okay.
We're going to go over the line itself. Okay? But does that map make sense? Yes, 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 online. So the idea being that this is just a map. Now, let's go and if you don't have a Tanakh, you should get one, but I happen to have some here for the couple you don't have.
It's the one that print that you can't read.
Yeah, it's a little tiny.
I'll have mine next week.
Okay, there you go. As you can imagine, I prefer large because it's print size. Let's go to the very first lines of Torah. Now, I just want to explain something to understand the depth of Judaism. A group of other rabbis and myself spent 6 months. We started once a week together. We spent 6 months on just the first 2 lines of the Torah. Okay, just to give you an idea, and we spent, I think, 90 minutes each session. That just gives you an idea of what it says. So here it says, in the beginning of God's creating the heavens and the earth, when the earth was astonishingly empty, with darkness upon the surface of the deep, and the divine presence hovered upon the surface of the waters, God said, "Let there be light," and it was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated between the light and the darkness. God called to the light day, and to the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, one day. Okay. Let's look at a few things. First of all, do you ever wonder why the Jewish calendar is always, we start our cycle at sunset? The first hour is not at sunrise, it's at sunset. Why? Because there was evening, there was morning. So our day, our 24-hour cycle actually starts in the evening, which means we're people that are dedicated to dreaming and to manifesting dreams. We're not, our purpose, what we do is, evening is the first thing. And so we have dinner, we do whatever we're doing in the evening, and then we go into a dream state. And then we were able to manifest them during the day, what we dreamed of during the evening. Make sense? That's the first part. That's why Jewish holidays and the Jewish calendar, the Jewish cycle begins at sunset.
But you said the first word is Breshit. Is that, I see it up here. Is it translated to anything on this first one?
Yeah, I want to use the Tanakh, use the other Tanakh. I understand it's smaller. But at least you can see it because that doesn't have the Hebrew next to it. That's the challenge with the JPS. Those they don't have Hebrew. So you guys are just have to squint. Breshit also is the name of this book of the Torah that we call Genesis, is actually called Sefer Bereshit. It is being. So I'm going to translate it differently. Okay. How many of you ever saw the play or the movie Inherit the Wind?
I think, yeah.
The old one was Spencer Tracy, Gene Kelly's in it.
Yeah.
Then they made a version with George C. Scott and Jason Robards, and they made another version. It's a famous, amazing play. It's about the Scopes monkey trial. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So about the William,
Great
which was
movie.
William Jennings Bryan and Clarence Darrow. They call them two different characters. They call them Brady and somebody else. But when they're having the discussion is why can't the Bible be in harmony with modern science? It says this rock is 10 million years. He asked the question, the lawyer asked the question, well, how long was the first day? The sun wasn't created yet. So how long was the first day? And the guy says, well, a day was a day. Okay, how long? He says, well, says it was a day. Could it have been a 25-hour day? Could it have been a 40-hour day? A month-long day? A year-long, what we consider a day now? Could it be a 10 million year day? It says it's a day. It doesn't say time. But let's look at this.
By the way, that is the thought process that allows for mutation, change, and the creation that continues today.
And it continues all the time. And there's a man named Rabbi Isaac of Accra. It's called Isaac the Blind. Rabbi Isaac the Blind. I believe he's 10th century. He calculates the age of the universe based upon the Hebrew scriptures. And then MIT did it in the 1970s, of however many billions of years. There's less than 3% differential between the two numbers. That's within the margin of error on either side. But that's biblical. So let's look at these words, what it really says, okay?
So Bereshit means in the beginning.
Well,
you're saying it doesn't mean it exactly. It doesn't exist.
That's why it says here in the beginning of God's creation. So we're going to translate this one word at a time, okay? Bereshit, all this map of creation in the beginning, before it began, when it began. Bara Elohim. So in this start of everything, Bara Elohim, God created et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Now, shamayim is the word for heaven. Okay? I like purple. I think I like purple. So shamayim, okay. So shamayim is heaven. Okay? That's where we use as heavens. But if we take that word, we can break it up so that there's this and then there's this. Two words. Esh, which means fire. Mayim, which means water. Right? Mayim means water. Esh, again, because remember it could be sound. So esh means fire. Mayim means water. Fire is really gas, is really what it is, if you think about it. Fire is not substance, it's not liquid, it's gas. So in the beginning, Reshit bara Elohim, in the beginning God created et hashamayim, the heavens, which are gas and liquid, ve'et haaretz, and the land, substance. So in the beginning, all there is gas, liquid, substance. Va'aretz haita tohu v'vohu, and the substance was nothing. It was tohu v'vohu, chaos and confusion. V'hoshak al panei tahom, and there was a darkness al panei, on the face of the depths. Okay, so there's just darkness and this bouillabaisse soup of gas and liquid and substance that's all convoluted and nothing but chaos and confusion. With me? Okay. Now, it then says, Ruach Elohim, the Spirit of God, merachefet. Now, merachefet in modern Hebrew means a different thing, but what it literally means is to move very quickly until a spark is created. It's one of the words that's used in modern Hebrew for sexual intimacy. But it's merachefet means to come together, create a spark. Okay? So the Ruach Elohim, the Spirit of God, passed over this bouillabaisse, creating a spark. Merachefet al panei hamayim, on the face, it created a spark on the face of the liquid. V'yomer Elohim, and God said, Yea or, there will be light. Yea or, and there was light. V'yira Elohim et haor, and God perceived the light. Ki, what does ki mean in Hebrew? Do you know? It means because. Okay? God, literally, this is what the Hebrew literally is saying. V'yira Elohim, and God perceived et haor, the light. Ki tov, because it was good. Not and it was good. Ki means because. God perceived the light because it was good. The Avdel Elohim, and God separated. So the first thing God does in the physical world is create a separation. And God separated ben ha'or u'vein ha'choshen, between the light and the darkness. So there's this bouillabaisse. The Spirit of God creates a spark over it. There's light. God perceives the light, and he separates the light from the darkness. Okay? And God called le'or. Le is a prefix that means to. So God called to the light. He didn't call the light day. He called to the light. Okay, it says right there. This is what the Hebrew says. He called le'or, to the light, yom, day. Well, the and to the darkness, kara, he called lila, evening, called night. Okay, so to the light he says day, to the darkness says night. And there was lila, ve'erev, and there was evening, vayivoker, and there was morning, yom echad, day one. So let's just recap this. God creates gas, liquid, and substance. It's a big bouillabaisse. It's a big stew. God's Spirit passes over it very, very quickly, creating a spark, which then creates this light that he perceives, because it is so good, and he says, to the light, day, to the darkness, he says night, because he separates the light from the darkness. Isn't that the Big Bang?
Yes, exactly.
Isn't that the Big Bang?
Yes.
Okay. It's right, but it's there in the Hebrew. Now, here's what happens. If you are studying, and this is part of the reason I'm putting this out and doing this way. When I taught at Loyola Marymount, I was often, asked questions about the Christian scriptures. And as a general rule, I would say, go ask my friend Father Bill Folko, go ask my friend Father Tom Rausch, because I don't speak Greek. And every translation, by definition, is an interpretation. The reason I like art schools, it's a straight Hebrew, straight to English translation. It's as good as it can be. But still, that's why we have commentaries. So Rashi, we have Rashi. I think. I can't see.
And I hate to bring up a question.
No, it's okay. Go ahead and ask.
Well,
I'm listening.
In my mind, so far, we've not negated the other planets that have darkness.
Not at all.
Light.
Not at all.
The whole universe.
How about that? Okay, I don't see Rashi up here. I thought we did have it. That's Shulchan Aruch. That is Chumash. Okay, so because I have my own home library. So Rashi, his commentary on the book of Genesis is as thick as this whole book, because the only way to study is to really explore. That's why we say it's called chavruta. Chaver means friends. Chavruta means we study together as friends. It brings us closer together. And it has to be done through dialogue. Because if you just read the flat words, it doesn't work. It just says, how do I translate Bereshit? Well, the guy who wrote this said in the beginning. So I just want to put this in perspective. When I don't comment on Christian scriptures generally because I don't speak Greek. And I wish people who didn't speak Hebrew stopped commenting on Hebrew scriptures, because they don't know what the heck they're talking about. And by the way, that includes most people who speak Hebrew who never bothered studying the words, never bothered really paying attention. If you're going to study Hebrew scriptures, it must be studied with someone who understands the Hebrew and has explored it. The same way, if you're really going to study Christian scriptures, you got to know Greek. You just have to. Bill Folko, God rest his soul, knew more about Christian scriptures than I will ever. He forgot more about Christian scriptures than I will ever learn, because he understood the Greek. You need to study it in Hebrew because there's subtleties that you can't translate. Now, our friends who go to whatever church and they study the King James Version, Okay? All right. It's written originally in Hebrew, right? It has gone through at that point from Hebrew, it's translated to Greek to Latin, ultimately to, in whatever order, Spanish and German, before it gets to any English translation. Each time there's an interpretation. As a result, what's said over here may have something to do with what's said over here in the original, but not necessarily. Example, it's, you talk to people about the Hebrew scriptures, and they say the God of the Hebrew scriptures is angry because they've read a translation that God was angry at the people. Except that's not what it says in the Hebrew. The Hebrew actually says that God's nostrils flared. Okay? Because we speak about God in anthropomorphic terms so we can understand it better. It's not that God has nostrils. But what does nostrils flaring mean? It means we're passionate about something. It doesn't mean I'm angry. My nostrils flare when I sob. They flare when I laugh. They flare when I scream. They flare when I'm excited. They flare when I'm angry. But it means all those different things. Make sense? Often the word yirah, which literally in Hebrew means awe, A-W-E, is translated as fear. But that's not what it means. Now, is fear part of awe? Yeah, fear is a portion of awe. If you're in awe of something, there's also a small part of you that's also scared because it's so much bigger than you are. But fear and awe are very different words, aren't they?
Yes.
Very different. So when we say that the 10 days of awe, which we make it a point to say, right, about between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it used to be said they called them the 10 days of fear. That's a horrible translation, isn't it? Okay? It's a very different translation when you realize that Shemayim, the word for heavens, is composed of Esh and Mayim. So this is an example of how we need to study and understand the actual language, because you can't get it otherwise. It's by definition interpretation. And it's somebody else's interpretation as opposed to dialogue. When you read it this way, Big Bang makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Go ahead.
And I had so many questions. Well, you do science. And I remember it was a beach barbecue. And I said, how can you also believe in God if you know science? There it is.
How can you not believe in God if you know science?
Exactly. On the changes from the Hebrew to the final English,
in those kind of versions, right? The King James.
But I'm performing in a Greek Orthodox church this Saturday, and it's one that we've done for.
Which church?
It's Greek Orthodox down in Cardiff by the Sea.
Oh, okay. No, I know some Greek Orthodox priests. That's why I was curious. I know John Baptist.
So
I know
one day I'm looking up because the entrance to the sanctuary has the 10 Commandments written out right there on the wall, on the outside. It's beautiful, done in gold and all that stuff. And I'm looking and it says, "Thou shalt not kill."
It's not what it says.
That's what that says.
But that's not, the Hebrew says, don't murder.
Murder. It's so different,
Okay,
that's only an example.
But it's a great example because we see it throughout, and you've got to kind of look at the Hebrew. Is there a relationship between murder and kill? Sure. It's not the same. Is there a relationship between awe and fear? Sure. But it's not the same. Okay? And so we want to kind of explore and start exploring this in a deeper way. Okay? So I think that's a good place to just start. What we're going to do is go through text. So there's going to be a lot of time, effort, and energy spent on the text itself, the beginning text. Because one of the things we're going to see in Judaism is a constant recapitulation of stories in different ways. It's kind of like listening to one note and hearing it in different octaves. Okay, still the same note, it's just a little bit different, right? We're going to be going through that. So if we get a strong foundation in the original stories, the original teachings, and what they really mean, we're then going to see recapitulations over and over and over throughout history. It's like the email that I wrote about today about the month of Kislev. There's so much going on in this month of miracles, and most people only look at it as, oh, Hanukkah, Maccabees, oil lasted 8 days. That's not what Kislev is about, right? I mean, I listed, I don't know how many great things happened in Kislev about transitions, miracles. especially those who were both born and died on the same day in Kislev. So what we're going to do is go through texts and teachings. Then we're going to go through Talmud, which is an exploration of those texts and teachings. And then we'll keep going through all the way to modern Israeli, what's going on in Israel today. By the time we're done, you will know more than a first-year rabbinic student. Okay, with the exception of being able to speak Hebrew, most first-year rabbinic students can't read or speak Hebrew that well anyhow. So, but you will know more than a first-year rabbinic student. Literally, that's not an exaggeration. And more than most second-year rabbinic students even, or others. Because we're going to explore in a deeper way. Okay?
I have to, I'm pretty close to David and Susan Lippman, and I'm going to call them and tell them they got to come.
I love it. No. So, any questions on that? We have class on Wednesday night. This class is not videotaped. You can't come. Sorry. It's the only class that I will not teach to women. It is a class on marital intimacy and sexual intimacy. And I won't teach that to women. Sorry, I'm just.
No, that's okay. You did another one last year.
I won't do it.
So it will
Not
be
interested.
Wednesday.
Thank you so much.
So it's Wednesday night.
Video.
No, we will not be videotaping.
Oh, I thought
Okay.
you said we're going to be watching video.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. Yeah, it's not. We don't do that. So
I miss it. I'm sorry.
it's okay. And then Friday night we have Shabbat services, and so we'll take it from there.
And the reason I would really want to see this because I'm 83 and I still don't know the answer.
So I will tell you one joke beforehand. It's not a joke; it's a true story. I did a wedding, and one of the people involved in the wedding was Steve Wynn, the hotel casino magnate. And we're talking at the reception. Now, one of the things I do with every groom is I actually have a talk about marital intimacy with every groom, no matter how old they are. Because the Talmud has pages on it, but most rabbis have never studied it. They don't know what or they use it as a way, they pander themselves and they use it that way, like the guy who wrote Kosher Sex and this kind of BS. But there are rules between, things about intimacy. So I obviously had the conversation with the groom. Now the groom, this was his second marriage. So he knew plenty. And so Steve and I are talking at the reception and he goes, Rabbi, you didn't really have a talk about sex with that person, with the groom, did you? I said, actually I did. He said, nothing personal, Rabbi. There's nothing he can learn about sex from you. Me being the schmendrick that I am, I said, Steve, do you want to bet on that? Which is probably one of the stupidest things you could just say to someone. Right.
Yeah.
And he goes, you want to bet with me? And I realized what a schmendrick I was. I said, I'll tell you what, if I'm right, your wife, if I'm right, you owe your wife whatever 3 favors she wants over the next week. Goes fine. Goes and he talks to the groom. Comes back. He's on the other side of the room. He starts swearing. I've never heard that many pejoratives in front of the word rabbi. Because he lost, because the groom had learned something. Payoff was the next day, we're all at brunch. Steve's there. His wife hasn't shown up yet. His wife shows up. She bypasses him, gives me a kiss on the cheek, and says, thank you, Rabbi. He paid up one of his favors last week. So there's a lot to learn is the point. And really what it's about ultimately is not just the intimacy between a man and a woman within the confines of married relationship. It's also about the intimacy that we have with God and God with us, because that's really what it's about. And so that's Wednesday night. Friday night we have Shabbat, and we'll take it from there. If there aren't any questions online, and we'll take it from there. It's sound like we'll go whatever pace we go, and we'll get it done. All right, fabulous.
I'll remember about 1%, and that's plenty.
That's why we study.
Thank you.